So we'll definitely start off with a very big thank you for all of those that are still here for the last panel. We are going to try our best to make it as interesting as possible and get you to the next part of the evening. So the introductions here, we have Louise, Dowson, CEO and accountable manager of Flypeople, a training organization based here in Malta. We have Mark Kammer, CEO of Dynamic Aviation, based in the UAE. Different to Louise here is that you are basically focused on business aviation, while Flypeople are focused on both commercial and business aviation, or a little bit of both then. You do both, okay then. So we have Stanley Bugeja, who is the managing director of DC Aviation, an operator and an FBO based in Malta, but also Germany and the UAE, but Stanley is also the president of the Malta Business Aviation Association. So the people problem, which seems to be a problem not just in aviation, but across the economy. In the legal field, we have the same problems, and I think this is being experienced throughout. An interesting statistic I came across, and it actually makes you think quite a lot, from CAE's talent forecast. These are based on 2023 numbers, basically saying that at the moment there are 57 active pilots in business aviation. By 2032, we are going to need 63,000 pilots, however, needing to account for 32,000 that will retire or need replacing. The demand is even more serious when it comes to maintenance technicians. 74,000 will be needed by 2032, with 44,000 of those needing replacement. And obviously, it's a problem that is already being felt across the industries, OEMs, and all of that. So, Mark, how bad do you think the problem is? How serious is the skills shortage?
Good evening, everyone. Still awake?
So, yeah.
Excellent. Beers are afterwards. Okay. Well, the skills shortage is definitely very severe, but it does. We look at it as a training organization, and we look at it from about the 70 business jet operators that we train in the UAE. So it's not the same for everyone. But it's not also necessarily a skills shortage. It is also having the right people in your organizations for the various aspects of the jobs that they need to accomplish. From the UAE's perspective, we import all our employees basically. So there is a lot of churn. There's a lot of poaching within the industry itself. So, and it's very, very different from one operator to the other operator. We see it at a distance, so neutral. But there are operators where the skill shortage is so severe that even like communication, when it comes down to the training requirements from their side, becomes very difficult for us to understand what actually their training needs are, what their requirements are, and passing on that information to us. On the pilot side, I know from the conversations that I have with various managing directors or CEOs, it can be crippling actually. So I don't know, Stanley. You, on the pilot side, you see probably a lot more than I do, but...
Charles will not like it. I'm looking forward to pilotless aircraft. So I think by 2032, if we get the AI right, we won't have a pilot shortage.
Only if we can make Microsoft and Zoom work at the moment with everybody being able to listen, then I'm willing.
Mark, from which areas of the world are you mainly importing personnel?
From where? So the UAE imports from wherever you can get it from. So there's more nationalities in the UAE than there is in hell, and we'll take whatever we get.
So there isn't a predominant pattern.
Well, there is. There is a lot gets brought in from the Indian subcontinent.
Okay.
And Pakistan being countries with high population, and then let's say from the Philippines as well, but obviously also from Europe and from everywhere. But and then there is a cultural problem with that as well. There's what let's say I'm going to have to tar brush now, but let's say a European mentality towards a problem may not be seen exactly like that if you have a different cultural understanding.
It's merging of all those cultures in
yeah,
general.
it's very
but that's
complicated.
Business aviation in general, I would say.
It's very complicated.
So Stanley, what do you think are the main structural issues that we are facing at the moment, affecting the talent attraction and the retention of that?
I think Mark touched a little bit on this already. It was interesting listening to Olivier earlier saying and talking about passion. And Mark just now mentioned cultural issues and whatnot. I think sometimes I feel like we're missing the wood for the trees. The industry has lost a bit its shine. It's easy for Olivier and me to, we love what we do. Every day is different, and there's passion, and then there's all of that. One of the major problems, and if we are to call a spade, is that this industry is no longer sexy for the younger generation. I mean, it's very nice of Dave O'Brien this morning saying, we should employ more Maltese. But in Europe, we have an aging population. So that's why we need to replace. Where is not an aging population is in Asia. It's third country nationals. You cannot bring them in Europe. Or it's very complicated to bring them in Europe. It was quite nice of Mark to say European. But what's European? You mean French, the ones that tax the industry? You mean Swiss? The ones who are outside the customs area? You mean Maltese, who are very pragmatic and and support the growth of the industry? You mean British, who jumped ship and left the European Union? Yeah, so the model in a lot. I mean, we all say, we need to attract this and that, and the young kids of today want to save the world. And they're more concerned about mental health, and they're concerned about equality and all these kind of cool words and things. But again, missing the wood for the trees. First and foremost, what do? We transport people from A to B. And unless there's a bit of passion in that, and the model is broken, because we spend, us CEOs and managers of organization, we spend more time sitting in workshops about gender equality and mental health issues and making sure nobody works on the weekend because it's too stressful on the kids. And I'm not saying it's not, but we're running on very thin margins. And then thankfully, again, in Malta, we have a very understanding civil aviation authority, as long as Charles is there, which he says, I'm not the policeman. No, it's one of the things which works in Malta. The authority says, I'm not the policeman, I'm a business enabler. So as long as you're doing your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things correctly. But Mark, we discussed this, and Louise, when we were discussing what to say in the panel. We spent 50, 60% of the time doing different audits for different authorities, sometimes within EASA, sometimes even internal. It's exactly the same ops manual saying everything, but you do it over and over again. Margins are thin. We're not doing things which increase the profitability, and we wonder why we're not attracting talent. I mean, you mentioned pilots. Europe does not recognize FAA licenses. We don't recognize any other license. You need to do all your subject all over again. But we have a problem with pilots. Surprise.
But that's also, my opinion, is over-regulating, creating bureaucracy that has made the industry less sexy, as you were saying, for lack of a better word. But I had a very interesting situation. I was interviewing a lawyer a while ago, and the interview changed literally course, where she was interviewing me as to how do I choose my clients we do business aviation and commercial aviation. How do we select our clients depending on saving the world? And basically, how are our clients green? Who are they? How are they offsetting? And I go, can we speak about the work side to it? Can we speak about career development? Can we speak about where you will achieve what you need to achieve effectively? But that has become secondary nowadays, completely, I feel at least. But let's move on to the separate side to it. What do we think that the quality of the training we are given, linking it to the retention of employees, effectively, of people, how important is that, Louise, when you're looking into that?
Well, Flypeople are a training organisation, so I'm going to say it's vital. Quality training is vital to staff retention, but I do firmly believe that as well. So often when a pilot or a crew member joins an organisation, an operator, their OCC training is their first kind of insight to the company. So whether the operator is choosing to do this in-house or outsource it to companies like myself or Mark's, it's the crew member essentially just sees that training as the company they're joining. So we try to make it, am I too close to your microphone? We try to make it more appropriate to the operator and relevant, basically, to that operator. As we discussed previously as well, with people hopping from one AOC to another, which happens a lot, obviously, a lot of their training is very generic. But again, if we can make it relevant to what they're doing and what they're joining, they feel more valued. If the company's invested in their training, they feel more valued and that they're investing in their career growth. So yeah, I think the quality of the training has a massive effect on the long-term retention of the staff. Certainly during COVID, we, I think, as an industry, fell into a culture of kind of finding the easiest and quickest way of being compliant with training, due to, obviously, restrictions on travel and people being in rooms together. We have already come back out of that, but I think it's still lingering with some that it's more of a tick box than actually it's a critical investment within any operator, that their crew are trained well and that they're knowledgeable and go online and can operate safely and efficiently.
You mentioned the hopping from one operator to the other. Stanley, do you see that as being a problem for, like, in Malta, but you also have the German side to it?
I mean, I'm not sure it is a problem. It obviously happens.
It's also human nature to do it, and it's expected.
It happens a lot. We're all trying to improve. You know, clients hop from one operator to the other. Employees hop from one operator to the other, from the authority to the operator, and vice versa sometimes. So yes, it happens, and you need to, as an employer, one has to, you know, create an environment which is conducive to, you know, people see potential opportunities, and these things are important for everybody. But again, I think a lot of it is industry as a whole fault. We're a very archaic, very traditional kind of industry. I mean, in some ways, we're extremely innovative. You know, if you look at the equipment and what we operate and what we do, I think it's probably one of the most innovative industries, and we're learning all the time, which makes it interesting, makes us passionate about it. But in some other ways, we're, you know, I fear we become a checklist organization. And how do you you know, make a kid excited and want to join the industry if all they're doing for, you know, they go to Louise for training, and it sounds all nice. They do fire drills and this and that, and to Mark, you know, he puts them in the simulator, and you know, and then they go to the office and they get a bunch of paper like this, you know, and ticket. And why? Because we need to give it to Charles. Otherwise, we don't get the COV.
But I think that's in general where the world has been shifting through, because we see it as lawyers. Nowadays, I started practicing, I think, about 14 years ago. there was much more legal you would do as to how much admin we have to do to protect our license, and now you need a license for this, for this, for this, whereby before being a lawyer was enough to do quite a lot of things. So it's a shift in the world in general of high regulation, and high level of compliance is just stifling everything, I see.
What, checklist for a checklist?
Checklist for a checklist, license for a license of a license.
But the point I'm trying to make is there is things that we as an industry can push forward. You know, there are Max, I believe, from Rise and other companies that are trying to automate and include that in this. You know, there's a bit of resistance from the industry, but also from the authority. I'm not picking on TMCAD and the IASA and whatnot, but for example, as an industry, we set up as business aviation ISBAH, right? It's a standard for business aircraft handling. Similar to ISAGO for the airline industry. The IASA does not recognize ISBAH. So you do audits to get the ISBAH because it's good for the industry. Yeah, you tell the operators who understand what ISBAH is, you are ISBAH. But the authority knows. So then you get the audit from the authority, the audit from, and the operator still has to audit you, even though you're ISBAH, because the authority doesn't recognize it.
Yeah.
It's not necessary.
As Mark was saying, checklist of a checklist, sort of just the replication.
Well, we've been audited in Dynamic 28 times this year.
In 1 year, in 12 months?
28, well, by
Not in 12 months.
just this year.
Okay,
No, I start on 1st of January, I start
Even.
counting again, so 28 times so far. My next audit is on Friday, so I land at 1 a.m., get to bed at 3 a.m., 4 hours of sleep.
You need a team just
9
taking
a.m.
care
I'll
of
be
that
studying.
side of it.
Well, it's a lot. And my question is, when it comes to the auditing part, we're just sort of digressing a little bit here, but these are my personal pain points, is do organizations that have maybe in the past only had like a level 3 finding, you know, something which has been easily fixable, do they have to be audited that often? Is that a requirement? Or can we sort of go to a sort of like a smart auditing requirement, you know, from our customers and the civil aviation authorities, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I digressed. I beg your pardon.
And simplify that. An apt question for Mark now. Do you see business aviation struggling more than commercial aviation when it comes to retention of employees?
Yes.
And that is, okay. And I would imagine, obviously, we see from our side, we see even the contracts, collective agreements, and the packages that are being offered in the commercial atmosphere. How can business aviation compete with that?
Well, again, it's very specific from operator to operator. I look at us as a training organization. So I can say that we as Dynamic cannot compete, for example, with Emirates Airlines salaries in the training.
And
it's just
salaries. You're saying salary packages in general.
Salary
so,
package,
the packages
but the whole package as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the way we do it, and you know, we hardly have any fluctuation. Just recently, my electronics engineer did actually leave because he wants to do his master's degree in electronics, but that was the first one now in about 3 years. So. When you're in a smaller organization, it's a lot about the atmosphere that you create. Actually, that gets created from top down. So if you make it despite all the stress, and the operator's stress gets passed on to us, and operations is always stressed, and they need everything yesterday, and we forgot, and now we need it day before yesterday. But if you're able to create an atmosphere where people enjoy coming to work, and you employ the right people, which is very difficult. So you know you're very critical on your selection process, and there's not a lot of people necessary to choose from. But you do have to create that atmosphere, regardless of what type of job is actually being performed. Whether it's the cleaner, my most important person. Yeah, he's the person Charles, if you were ever to audit us one day, that's how I pass my audits. It's spotlessly clean when you walk in, and so my most important person. Or it's the trainers who you sort of, if they would need a day off, they need a day off as long as it doesn't impact my training. So you have to be a bit more flexible than the large organizations. But business aviation does struggle with it, and especially depending on, if you're on what's it called when you work 20 days on, 20 days off? Rotations, I beg your pardon. When you're on rotations, that's quite hard, actually. It's nice to be off. But the 20 days that you're away, you miss birthdays, you miss parties, you miss New Year's, everything. So,
but then you have the 20 days off that are proper off, that are properly dedicated to your life. So there's a little bit of a balance over there.
It's not always like that.
It's business aviation.
We don't get off days.
Well, that's when they do the training.
So they're doing the training during the off days.
Yeah.
So generally, your majority, the majority of your clients would be operators, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. For Flypeople, certainly, yeah.
For training organizations, I guess, in general. What can operators do to help you out or to work better together in facilitating that or creating a better atmosphere throughout?
Okay, so, I mean, if an operator's outsourcing their training, then obviously the first thing they need to do is put the third-party training provider into their OMD, at which point they need standardizing. And they need to share, obviously, they need to be willing to share content with us, whether it's their OMA, their OMD, and any relevant OMB, or whether they're just willing to share the specifics, the SOPs that we need, and the information we need to be able to deliver their training compliant to their requirements. So there's a lot of collaboration required. We also obviously need to make sure that we have trainers who are qualified appropriately to deliver what we need to deliver to them. Yeah, so for example, if they're dangerous goods carry operator, we need an instructor who's qualified. If they are a Maltese AOC, for example, we need an AVSEC Malta qualified security instructor. So there's a lot of initial and ongoing, actually, collaboration. We encourage with our clients that at least once a year we have a group meeting for a standardization and an update on things that have been happening internally for them that we can then use in our recurrent training for them. So we kind of become part of their company culture, and our instructors obviously know their SOPs, I hope, better than their crew do. So
an interesting thing Mark said earlier before, and I agree with you 100%, is that the stress of the operators goes be to training organizations, us, all the service. What can we do to reduce that, to be prepared for that a little bit more, obviously in your field, not our field? Or what can the operator expect better from a training organization to facilitate that, to reduce it as much as we can?
Do a lot of money and retire.
Everyone's end goal, and then they get bored at home.
So our number one finding would be that we haven't got updated materials from operators. Okay. For example, so
or their expectations, or having everything up to date as to what's expected.
Yeah, and what we see, and I'm speaking for our kind of part of the world, a little bit closer to the Middle East, is that the training coordinators, these are not necessarily the training managers, the training coordinators don't actually know what they're coordinating. And they don't have any requirements. So just recently we had an operator where I said, oh, for God's sake, just bring in the coordination team so we'll show them what we're doing so that they have an understanding, and that's why when we ask a question, they have a better understanding of how they can answer it or who they have to speak to in the organization to get the information. It's the two hardest things in aviation training is getting a contract signed and getting the material from an operator that you require to customize the training to suit their needs, and getting feedback. So we also do, for example, CRM training. So operators have an SMS. They have their hazards, and everything is registered. Please share it with us. I mean, we're not going to go out. I don't say who my customers are, and I'm not going to go, ha ha, look at this. No, it's valuable. For the pilots, if it's pilot CRM, it's pass this on to us, please. We're dependent on that because we can give you 1,000 other examples, but if this is specific to your organization, that's really, really good. But that hasn't quite, I don't know, it's tricky.
Stan, anything that can, from your opinion, on the other side, obviously, that can be done better or generally improved or not?
I mean, in an ideal world, there's no denying what Mark and Louise are saying. If you want good training, you need to share your company material with the training provider. Alternatively, you do it yourself. If you have the time and the money to do it, it doesn't guarantee that the trainer actually knows what he's training if it's done within the organization, but that's a different story. Because my problem, and it's the topic is solving the people's problem, right? My problem is precisely what Mark said. You have a training coordinator who does not know what he, she, they are coordinating. And that is the problem. We allowed the industry to adapt into these bits and pieces who have no clue whatsoever. And unfortunately, including authorities, what it is that we're doing in the first place. And how do you get somebody passionate about their job if they have no idea what they're actually delivering? And we will not solve the people's problem because we're competing with other industries that also have a people's problem. So unless you have to cultivate the passion, and you cultivate the passion by, really explaining what it is all about, and also, it's a tough job. It's not an easy job. Business aviation, unlike the airlines, I'm not saying the airlines is an easy job, but airlines, they go, Malta-Rome 20 times a month, and that schedule is organized 2 years in advance more often than not. I don't know where my aircraft are going to fly tomorrow. Yet I'm supposed to audit the handler, the fuel provider, the catering provider, the hotel, make sure that there's no mental health issues for the pilots in that hotel because the breakfast is not served right. It's a tough job. And if you are expecting a 9 to 5 kind of job, it's not a 9 to 5 job. 9 to 5, nothing happens. Then Montreal wakes up, and they start sending you, aircraft documents which you need to send to the authority to register, to get a C of A, to I don't know what. Then Montreal goes to sleep, and now everybody here is asleep. I mean, FBOs, there's a couple of FBOs here in the room as well. 9 to 5, you get, 4 or 5 aircraft. Then as soon as it's 5, people who afford to fly on a business jet finish their jobs and fly to Malta to go on their boat. And they land what? At midnight. But what do I do? It's a tough job. So unless you have the passion, you need to somehow cultivate the passion for the job. And you don't cultivate a passion for the job by making them fill 20 Excel spreadsheets and 200 reports which nobody reads. But when I'm auditing Mark, show me the report, show me the evidence, and we show him 20 reports in a file, and okay, here it is, approved.
Agreed.
He hasn't audited me yet.
One of the feedback I've been getting in general from younger generations, not seeing aviation as an attractive industry to work with, is time pressure. And that is one of the things that maybe is not, it's a different mindset nowadays. Louise, how can you balance, obviously, the pressures that are being put to achieve certain pressures from the operators again, for you to achieve certain targets while maintaining standards that you have to, through regulations and through integrity of your company, to do that?
Yeah, so it's It's like the three-legged stool, time, cost, quality. If you get one of them wrong, the stool obviously collapses. So time is often our biggest challenge, I would say, because more often than not, we'll get requests from operators who need training yesterday, and we don't even have the material yet. So it's a challenge because obviously we want to provide the training, but we want to provide good training. So we have to balance that with obviously the quality and the cost. So we just try to work with the operator and gather as much information as we can, as quickly as we can, and put together a training course that works for them within their timescale. The other challenge is not only short time frames to work within, but also with, as Stanley was saying, he doesn't know what his jets are doing tomorrow. So they don't know when the pilots will be on the ground, available for training, so they can't often plan a month in advance. You know, our crew are going to be grounded for 4 days, let's do some ground training. It's more reactive than that. So as a training provider, we try to be reactive too. So I think you probably find the same, Mark, that you just get these last minute requests and you just find the space to put them in, you find an instructor available, and you find people to just get the material out.
It's personal to business aviation. Commercial aviation is obviously
Yeah, absolutely.
way in
Yeah.
advance,
Commercial is
and
easy.
everything's
Commercial
planned.
is the children's version of it.
They often tell us 6 months in advance.
Yeah.
We can't cope.
possibly.
Can't work that far
I
forward.
was telling Alistair, we get board meetings scheduled a year in advance, so
I have some operators, so we have scheduled every week, we have multiple courses, but we always have Monday, Tuesday cabin crew, Tuesday pilots join, Wednesday is first aid, Thursday, Friday cabin crew, Friday is pilots. And I have some operators who I said, don't even, just write the email that the guy came, but make him turn up on a Tuesday or on a Friday. That's all. That's all he has to remember. Just don't book and cancel in the same email and send that to me 8 times. Please don't. Yeah, so it's a difficult one. Yeah,
the statistic
It's
up
fun.
here is an interesting one, is what percentage of your workforce is passionate, and it seems to be quite a high percentage that are still saying that.
Well, there's all aviation professionals in here.
And that's a bit biased. It's not very,
This is not
very
across
neutral,
the-
is it? And possibly people are sitting next to their colleagues, so they need to vote.
Or their boss.
But obviously the age-old question, the one that we're all aware of, I'm sure it's being discussed across all sections of the economy, what we touched upon, is the younger generation having maybe possibly a different way of thinking, a different mentality as to what a career is, what the workforce is. Now, Stanley, you have enough years under your belt in this industry to give us your opinion. You do.
Yeah,
What would you tell? What would you tell a 23-year-old, a 22-year-old going into the industry and wanting to succeed at the end of the day and wanting to build a career in this industry?
I'm only 25, what would I know?
You're 25, so I'm 12, okay.
No, I think we live in a quick fix kind of world today, and it's not really the young generation only. It's we're recycle stuff and use one-time use, throw away. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur from day one, and an inventor, and all of those things in no time. And those people exist, but the reality is that they're few and far in between. And I think it is very important to somehow motivate people to have an entrepreneurial thinking, but to be successful, it's a kind of trial and error thing. It requires perseverance, it requires time, it requires experience. And you don't gain experience because in the morning you walked into the office, you looked at Mark and you go like, oh, what a great job he does. Now I can do it 10 times better because you spent 8 hours with Mark. It requires time. And how do you retain people? You try and find talent, but it's difficult to find all the talent that you need. So sometimes we need to also be prepared as employers to invest in people who have promise, not necessarily immediate obvious talent, qualifications and experience. and invest in them. And it's a bit, it's a bit of hope and prayer that because you invest in them, they appreciate the investment, they stick around with you, they grow with you, and it's beneficial to both parties. I'm not saying I have some magic solution for it, but it is I think it's the main thing that we can do to keep talent. It's it's very difficult to find a very experienced engineer like this. So maybe invest in I think this morning somebody was mentioning, invest in the bit of these new kids who have some kind of passion, maybe don't even know that business aviation exists, and grow them slowly, give them, the not indoctrination, but the guidance to grow with you in the organization.
Personally, I believe that the right aptitude is more important. The aptitude to it more important than the actual knowledge at that point. So
anything can be taught.
So we promise we won't go over time, that we won't keep them much longer. So just the last one each. If there's anything that can cross your mind, what are one change that we can do that the industry can do to improve this retention, to improve attracting more talent to the industry? One. Stanley needs 2 or 3.
So what we do at Dynamic and what's been, well, if it's successful, I don't know, but we've been speaking to schools, and schools have been coming to us and we've been providing them with a 3-hour hands-on sort of practical session, bit of CPR, bit of firefighting, bit of slide evacuations, bit of turbulence. Kids love crashing. So we sort of open their eyes to the aviation industry, or at least the part that we're in, because there's so much more out there, with hoping that at some point, that will have sort of sown the seed that 5 years, 10 years down the line makes them sort of consider aviation or the business aviation industry. That's sort of a long-term one. And I do know that it sort of worked a little bit, because we recently did it for some elderly kids that are now looking to go to university, and I just received an email earlier on today to say that one of them is taking an aviation, is going to an aviation university or aviation course at a university, and could he have a certificate of attendance of the day? So we've already provided that to him. So I think you need to start him off early, start him young, get them a little bit excited about it, and don't let them go and see any other industries, which are much easier.
But that links to the first question we have over there, is, are young people aware of the various jobs in the aviation side? I think there's a much greater awareness that's being done. Stanley, from the MBA, I am aware that you've been outreaching, we've been outreaching to MCAST schools, and there's, I think, other organizations, Women in Aviation, that are doing that to create that awareness in general, at least in Malta.
I think Root is doing that, Women in Aviation as well. The EBAA is doing that. There's a course in airport or aviation business management, and there's a whole module which is actually run by the EBAA in France, in a university in France. I think the BBGA is doing something similar in the UK. So yes, but it's not easy, because everybody is aware of airlines, because we go on holidays from when we are kids, and you yourself, when you opened the panel discussion, you told us about missing pilots and missing. I was surprised you actually mentioned technicians, because normally it's pilots and flight attendants, because nobody sees.
That statistic is specific to business aviation.
No, I know, but people only think about pilots, and which are going to be obsolete anyway, and flight attendants, which again, if David has his way and puts standing passengers in his aircraft, also will become obsolete. No, but joking apart, the aviation industry is a lot more. There's flight dispatchers, there's crew planning, there's, I mean, and HR, marketing, you know, I mean, there's huge, you know, God knows how many different parts. And Mark said it, so I'm just repeating what Mark said. You need to start them early. You know, from even 5-year-olds classes. You bring them to the airport, take them to an MRO, take them to an FBO, and show them something different that they don't see, right? Everybody sees the Lufthansa, the Air Malta, the Ryanair. Show them a Lear 45, Pilatus, whatever, an MRO with different aircraft at year 5, at year 10, at year 12. And slowly but surely you will get some interest.
So we're 10 minutes over time, meaning we're holding up the rest of the freedom. Louise, any closing
They're
comments?
still here, so.
They're still here, yes. So we have any closing
No,
comments?
I totally
anything?
agree with Stanley and Mark about exposing young people to the world of aviation. But in terms of business aviation specifically, we also have a big skill pot in the commercial side. So pilots, cabin crew, operations people, I think often they don't realize that if they come over to business aviation, it's actually a completely different job. And maybe we need to make it more attractive.
And a completely different industry. When I'm asked who are your clients, I have to mention my commercial clients. You mention your business aviation clients, everyone just looks at you. So we're done, I guess. No questions, right? So no. So thank you all for sticking with us for the last one.